We have set up sort of an early country store.
Oh, yes. Let's go
Much
over there and
much
take a
of
look
this
at that.
came from a store called Brown's Store.
Uh-huh.
We have what was used mainly to weigh out meat and produce.
Mhm.
It still works. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
this is fine working condition. I don't know how accurate it is, but I bet you it
Look
is.
at how thick that
pretty
glass is, though.
Yeah,
that,
that's so you can
would
read the
hold meat,
numbers.
Yeah.
That's so you can read the numbers. This is the kind of scale where you see the comedy films where the butcher puts his thumb on the scale so he gets a few extra ounces they would charge the customer. Of course, the
old cash register.
old cash register. In the back, although they're showing their age, what the store would have typically in pre-1940, a grocery store, general store, would be everything on the shelf. If you wanted something, you asked the proprietor or the clerk to get it for you. That was before self-service. There were no shopping carts. There were no shopping baskets. People did not get their own stuff. You asked the man who owned the store to get it for you, or his clerk. We have a collection of old tins, baking powder, and there's one for cough drops. Probably belongs down in Peavers.
Yeah, that's right, exactly. So it was all, was not self-service. It was
No,
all...
it's not self-service. Here is a case that was used to store Grand Estate potato chip bags in Brown's store. And his old beer can, the kind that you had to use a can opener to open before the pop tops.
They even had a accounting book.
Yeah, we had, and prior to computers and all, the store owner had a lot of people on account, as they would say.
Yeah.
So he would mark down what they took, and once a month they would pay him.
It was actually quite a responsibility then.
Oh, yeah.
They had to account for everything, of course.
These are facades from fourth-class post offices that were saved from the dump, from being sent to the dump, brought here. Fourth-class post office is like a small post office that was set up in the corner of a grocery store, a drugstore, or a general store, and you could buy stamps there and maybe even get your mail there, as you see here. These came from North Salem, the big one. Interesting here, somebody gave us the license plate.
Oh, yeah.
03073. That, you recognize that? That's a zip code for North Salem.
That's right.
Somebody had that on their license plate.
But it is true that a lot of places didn't have a regular post office, and they relied on these little systems or whatever.
If you have this 03073 zip code,
Yeah.
you have to go to the North Salem post office to get your mail. They don't deliver it.
Oh, at that
Little
time.
known fact. Here we've set up what was in Brown's store as a part of their hardware and provisions and other sundries that they had in the store. This is an idea of what you might have found in an old general store. You notice that the first thing is that the containers for the various items, like the biscuits, the soap, the tea, and etc., are very much larger than you would find in a supermarket today. What people did was they came in and they wanted a small amount of one of these things. So they would get, for example, the tea, they would get maybe a couple of ounces of tea, or I don't think they would get a whole pound of tea. That's a lot of tea. But they would get a couple of ounces of tea, and the grocer would get it out of the container. Lennox soap, that was a fairly common name 100 years ago. Lennox made a brand of brown soap, which they used for laundry, and it was supposed to be effective in hard water, which probably was common since most of the water was taken out of wells in the area. You see some small containers for milk and cream, these would be the kind of containers people would bring to the store to get filled with whatever they had. One of the things that they would fill these containers with would be molasses. Molasses came in a big barrel like this, and they used a hand pump to pump it out. There's a spigot over here. Obviously, this one hasn't been used for a while. But while we're here at the molasses container, let's give you a little bit of trivia.
Okay, all right.
Here we have 3 containers, and if you can get a picture of these 3 different containers, they're 3, what we would say, 3 barrels of various sizes. Only one of them is technically a barrel. Okay. Only one of them. And that's the one in the middle. By definition, a barrel is 40 gallons, and that's a 40-gallon barrel.
So what would this be called?
This one here we would call a cask.
Okay.
It's bigger than a barrel, a cask. And the little one,
Yeah.
you have any idea what that would be? Probably not. That's a keg.
Oh, I was going to say.
Most people are familiar with kegs when they're filled with beer, but
right, exactly.
a keg is smaller than a barrel, and a barrel is 40 gallons, and then anything bigger is a cask. So there's your trivia for today.
Very good. And there's a checkerboard on there.
Yeah, that's a checkerboard might be used by people who came to the country store or the general store to pass the time of day, usually in the wintertime when there wasn't much work going on in the fields.
Yeah. And let's see, I see an old butter and cheese chest over here, which we'll get a picture of later, but
Yeah,
tell me about
this
that.
is where they would have kept butter and cheese in the store with ice. And I believe the last time we were here, we looked at the equipment that they used to use to cut blocks of ice out of Canopy Lake or the ponds around here.
Right.
They would use the ice to keep that butter and cheese cold in the store. It's like a big refrigerator. And they have a couple of display windows up at the top to show you what was inside.
Very good. Now, what are those containers right over there?
These containers would have things like oats or rye or something, maybe even flour, where you could get them out by taking a scoop and opening up the top and scooping it out. You have a little bit of that still in some of the stores where you can get cereal or flour or rice or something by the scoopful.